if you want to learn things, you said to get a job as a UI designer. That's exactly what you said. This website, Laws of UX, is, we talked about it yesterday because it's amazing. You need to understand the laws of UX that are behind all of the layout that you create. So learning these will help. I know all of them by practice. You don't need to learn their names, but you need to understand the law itself. So once you have this, for example, the one that we talked about yesterday, like the law of proximity and the law of common region, giving you some insight on some items, if they have like a card around them, right? These items have a card around them, meaning that you can understand that the gestalt at the bottom is part of the card, even though there is such a space in between, right? Because the background is a different color. So this is based on the law of common region. So most of these laws are very simple. As always, you can click on any card and read a bit more if you wanted to, of like the takeaways, the origin, and then if you really want to deep dive on a lot of articles about what the fuck that is, that's the first one. This is one of the best things you can have. As I always say, if you want to be a good UI designer, you need to understand UX. Otherwise, you won't be a good UI designer. If you just want to be a UX designer, you don't need to give a shit about UI design. So depending on where you want to go, as always, it's good to know both sides, but as a UI designer, you need to get your UX brain working. And then the second is an interesting-ish thing. I'd say it's more dev-oriented than design-oriented, but still. You can type UI design, you will have a bit of a tree and things related to the topic that you decided to look for. So right now, for example, you have user interface, which is right here. Then you have a basic with a Coursera course, some help, and articles and things here and there, and then some newsletter if you wanted to. So it's a basic tree. It doesn't mean all the content in this would be great and an absolute masterpiece of content, but it's a base. It's a very useful website to just look for something and say, okay, I'm looking for UX-based stuff, in which case you get like where you need to start, and then depending on where you want to go, you can see the basics and all of the things that could lead you to different branches of or sub-branches of the job itself. So laws of UX, first one, very useful and mandatory to know, but before you can break the rules, you need to understand them and know why they have been put in place. The other things that I always say, Dribbble and Behance are very good if you want to learn visual things. So because you said UI design, that's very much what I would recommend you to do. Dribbble is a easy thing to get inspired. It's better for specifics if you have specific research, like you're looking to do input fields. That's easier, and then Behance is more for a global project-based thingy. But on Dribbble, what I recommend you to do is just scroll, and then when you find something that you say, oh, that's interesting, I don't know exactly how I could do that. That's the phrase that you need to tell yourself in order to click, basically. So let's say I don't exactly know how I would create this one. I just do scroll wheel click on that, and then I continue scrolling on the page. And then I find something else where I say the same thing, and I click, and then I click. And then you do that for, I don't know, let's say 10 or 12 or 50 or whichever amount you want. You can just look at them, and then if you have the ability to zoom in with the shot itself, then just zoom in to understand. And then without doing anything, try to understand the base layout and how it works. From what I'm seeing, we have a sidebar, main section, and the main section is divided in a header, data, thingy, and a chart. That's what we have, and then there is probably a table under that, but I don't know more than that. And so from here, what I can see is the amount of white space that is used. And so most new designers, specifically UI designers, don't know how to play with white space. Me included, in the beginning, I had a very hard time to justify this amount of white space at the top and at the bottom. Like, that was a bit overwhelming because it's like, this is lost space, but in reality it's not. Here I can see that, for example, the section on the side, these 6 elements are exactly the same thing, and so we can really use, sorry, that music was a bit too strong for my taste right now. So you can use this in your head without touching anything to say these could be or should be a component that is reused. And then you can see that this data numbers have a very similar layout. And so you can say these should also be, technically speaking, a component. And so by thinking about them elements while not touching anything or not recreating anything in terms of construction and understanding the layout by knowing the UX laws, you will have a better understanding of the thing that you see on Dribbble or whichever website you decide to go to. And then, once you've done all of that, which I know it's a bit of work, you can find something. This one is a bit easy, but you can find something, and the exercise is try to recreate it pixel by pixel. By doing so, you will have a bit of experience on recreating a specific layout. Do things that are not UI related, because I think as UI designer, when you are doing things outside of work, you don't really want to do UI. You can go on Dribbble and say, okay, so these shots, specific shots, have an interesting thing, and I really like them, and I would like to know how I could, I don't know, create charts like this one, or these ones are very hard, to be honest. But let's say this is the thing that you want to do. You want to recreate this timeline thingy. Then your goal is to do a right click, copy image, and then go on Figma or Sketch or whatever, paste the thing, what happened here, that's good, and then either you decide to go with a bit of a cheeky rotation to see if that works, and if you can have something that is a bit-ish aligned, kinda, even though that's not the case because this is a skewed overall picture, but nonetheless, you can have this, and then you say, okay, so from what I understand, we have an icon that's probably 24 by 24, followed by title, which by the size of it seems to be at somewhere, I don't know, 12, but it's also a zoomed out thing. So let's say 14, and let's make that bold. I do that with another layout frame. I resize it, and I can see that we have a bit of padding top and bottom. So let's say, I don't know, 4, and see where we go. 4 seems okay, so let's do 4 everywhere. And then once we have this, we can add a fill color. Fill color is that color. A bit of radius. And so far we created a thing that is similar. Not identical, but similar. By doing that, by practicing on duplicating the thing that you see on the daily, you will practice your muscle, brain muscle, and hand muscles to recreate or have ideas of specific layouts. As always, the recreation of anything that is existing on Dribbble is for education purposes only. You don't have any rights to use that in a client project unless you modify it enough to make it look very different. And when you copy something that you found on Dribbble, don't copy for copy, copy to understand. Meaning that understanding the construct, the layout, the reasoning behind where, why, what happened if we made more space, less space. All of these questions that you can ask yourself is the thing that you need to do while you're copying things. It will just help you a lot. And the last thing that I will tell you is to get inspired. Do not only look at UI design. If you are looking for a UI design job, look and understand different things. As you can see, I have a shower head right here. And understand why, physically speaking, they decided to go with that design. It's a very different question. It's a very different set of understanding that is needed to physically understand why they said we need that type of spread for the holes, right? Or the button can be like a flexible thingy. It's really helpful to look at things that are absolutely not related to UI. And so when you look at my Pinterest feed, I have a lot of things that are still UI for sure, but I also have a lot of things that are physical photographs, art thing in 3D, shoes. But yeah, most of the things that I have and that I get inspired by are physical objects. Someone who creates something like packaging, like this one, for example. Very interesting. And yeah, get inspired by anything you can see or find is my best advice, always has been my best advice.